My grandma's son screams at her and threatens us, and somehow, we're the problem. I want to begin by stating that I am far from perfect. I have had my disputes with my grandmother over the years, but she has cared for me since I was an infant. I essentially owe her my life. My mother was unable, both financially and mentally, to raise me, and although I love her dearly, she faces her own challenges. This narrative stretches from my childhood to the current day, and regrettably, it is ongoing. My grandmother's son, whom I will never refer to, as my uncle has always been a heavy drinker and has treated family members poorly. He is a cruel drunkard. His two eldest sons and his oldest daughter want nothing to do with him due to the way he treated them during their upbringing. Now, his youngest son, my cousin, who is in his late 20s or early 30s, has suffered similar mistreatment and also wishes to distance himself from him. Numerous incidents exemplify his behavior. When family visited his home, if we laughed, spoke at a normal volume, or simply enjoyed ourselves in the front or backyard, he would charge over and shout at us to be quiet. If my cousin had friends over, grilling hot dogs on the back deck and conversing softly, he would rise from his bed just to berate them. My cousin is one of the kindest individuals, I know, soft-spoken and always mindful of his tone, having been conditioned to anticipate the inevitable outburst. My role in caring for my grandmother. I have been caring for my grandmother since I moved back in with her in February 2017, 8 years now. I take her to distant medical appointments, monitor her bank accounts for potential fraud, ensure her homeowners association dues are paid, and address unexpected issues, such as when her washer and dryer malfunctioned or when the air conditioning stopped working in the midst of an Arizona summer. When I returned to live with her, we made a pact. She would cover the expenses, and in return, I would have a place to stay while pursuing my degree or finding employment. She encourages me to keep advancing in school, though she occasionally feels overwhelmed and inquires about my future plans. I consistently reassure her that my goal is to complete my education and become a financial advisor. However, these questions only seem to arise after nights filled with her son's drunken rampages. He refers to my mother and me as moochers, thieves, and lowlifes, every insult imaginable. My grandmother has never been one to raise her voice, but this winter, 2024-25, she finally found her voice and began fighting back. While I admire her courage, no 90-year-old woman should have to scream at her own son just to protect herself. The roles of her three sons. The eldest son, the drunkard, oversees her bank accounts from Alaska, ensuring bills are paid online. That is the extent of his contribution. The other two sons visit occasionally and assist with yard work, but beyond that, they do little. A landscaper is usually hired to manage the palm trees and shrubs. The house situation and her will. My grandmother's house is half in her name and half in his name, and I do not understand why it was simply how it was purchased. However, she still retains full control over her half and can legally bequeath it to anyone she wishes. As for her will, it is currently designed so that her eldest son and his wife possess equal decision-making authority regarding its execution. This is extremely troubling because, given his conduct, it is evident that he will attempt to assert control over everything. I have urged my grandmother to consult a lawyer and a financial advisor to ensure her will is legally sound, leaving no opportunity for manipulation. She now recognizes that her wishes may not be honored as intended and is contemplating legal options to prevent any loophole he might exploit. She is aware that once she passes, he will strive to dominate the situation and complicate matters for the rest of the family, just as he does while she is still alive. My mother's role in the household. My mother also helps around the house. Due to her disabilities, she is unable to work, but she is still capable of handling household tasks and taking my grandmother to local medical appointments. His behavior and escalating verbal abuse. My grandmother does not feel physically unsafe around him, but she tiptoes around her own home because his drunken outbursts can be triggered by the slightest provocation. His impatience is intolerable, and he often yells at her over matters that require kindness and understanding. A recent instance, he purchased her a new phone and AirPods, but due to her poor vision and hearing, she needed assistance in setting them up. Instead of helping her patiently, he yelled at her. His drinking has also led to more severe outbursts this winter than ever before. from slamming the microwave repeatedly after it broke to shouting without reason and raging over trivial matters, the situation is only escalating. I have started recording these outbursts to document just how severe they are. The most recent example, from February 16th, was particularly chilling. At the end of the recording, he is heard screaming at our grandmother, "When you are dead or you are dead." Earlier in that same recording, he tells her directly, "I do not care what you have to say." Additionally, during that same episode, he scolded my grandmother for something completely absurd, the fact that I express my love for her after every conversation. I say it because I genuinely love her and want her to feel valued. She is seldom, if ever, told "I love you" by any of her children, yet somehow, my showing her affection and appreciation became an issue for him. His threats and the future. He has also threatened that when my grandmother passes away, my mother and I will have to seek a new place to live. He claims that once she is gone, he will take control and ensure we have nothing. This is particularly infuriating and hypocritical because when their father died, all the brothers prioritized ensuring that my mother was cared for. Now, he has completely reversed his stance and is doing everything in his power to exclude her. As for me, I do not care about receiving anything. My concern lies in ensuring that my grandmother's wishes are fulfilled and that her will is executed exactly as she intended. I am unsure if his threats to return are genuine. He has stated that he plans to come back every winter after leaving in April, but I cannot tell if he sincerely means it or if he is merely using it as another method of control. What I do know is that if he does come back, I will leave. I cannot and will not endure this again. Summary: my grandmother raised me, and I have been taking care of her for the past 8 years. She is 90 and still maintains her independence, but she requires assistance with medical appointments, finances, and daily tasks, which I manage. My mother, who has disabilities, also contributes to household chores. Her eldest son is an abusive alcoholic who persistently verbally assaults her, my mother, and me. This winter, his outbursts have heightened, prompting me to begin recording them. One of the worst involved him shouting, "When you are dead," at her. He has threatened that following her death, my mother and I will have to relocate. He asserts that he will return each winter, but I am uncertain of his intentions. Should he come back, I will leave. His presence has significantly damaged my mental health, leading to anxiety attacks, panic episodes, and exacerbating my depression. He departs in April, and his exit cannot come soon enough. I simply needed to express this. Thank you for reading. Story 2. Aita for not wanting to work on my day off. To provide some context for what is occurring later, I need to explain the past few weeks. I have been with my girlfriend for a little over a year. My girlfriend, her 2 children, and I have all been quite ill with various seasonal illnesses, sinus infection, COVID-19, flu, etc., for what seems like a month. Everyone has been exhausted and worn out. While I was ill with the flu myself, her daughter was sent home from school with a fever and stomach pains. When I say I was sick with the flu, I mean body aches, severe headaches, and an overwhelming need for rest. My girlfriend called me to pick her daughter up, and I did so, feeling frustrated that I had to drive her to the hospital, knowing they would only confirm what we already suspected. Nevertheless, I complied. Due to the weather, my girlfriend received a day off and dedicated the entire day to cleaning. Afterward, she expressed being upset because she felt like she received no help around the house and that she handled everything herself. While she works less than 30 hours a week and hasn't made dinner in the past month, I usually work 40 hours a week, take care of most of the bills, and I am the only person in the household who cleans. I contribute significantly to her and her children, and I don't think it is fair for her to expect me to do as much, if not more than she does while working more hours. She then caught the flu. Although I still felt unwell, I was in better shape than she was, and continued to prepare dinner every night and clean up after meals. Last Thursday was particularly taxing for me. I came home exhausted from work and sat down for a brief moment. My girlfriend and her kids had the entire day free. The house was a mess. Yogurt wrappers strewn about, tissues everywhere, macaroni and cheese left in bowls, and dirty dishes piled on the stove. I was simply too tired to address it after working all day. At 7:00 p.m., we both realized that the children needed to be in bed within an hour. I hurried to start making dinner, assuming that my girlfriend would do the same. Instead, she dashed downstairs to do her laundry for work, bringing it back upstairs and starting to fold it while watching television. I was baffled she had the entire day to complete it, and now, with dinner needing to be prepared, that seemed to prioritize. We had previously discussed how her job often appeared more important than me or the kids, as she was unwilling to spare any time from it, even getting upset when I couldn't leave work early to take the children to gymnastics. At this point, I was frustrated. We discussed it, and she made an excuse about how she intended to go to dinner after doing laundry, which only took her 30 minutes. I chose not to dwell on it. On Saturday morning, we talked about how the weather on Sunday was expected to be unpleasant and that she had to work. She invited me to accompany her that day to clean houses. I assumed she was joking at first. However, she was serious. I told her honestly that working on my day off was the last thing I wanted to do since I hadn't had a proper day off in weeks. She got upset, claiming I never wanted to spend time with her and that I was willing to let her drive in the bad weather alone. I responded that I would rather stay home, as I hadn't had a chance to simply relax while both kids were at their father's house. She replied, "You get so much alone time, what are you talking about?" In reality, I hadn't had more than 2 hours of personal time in the last 2 months, while she had been going to the spa, visiting Boston with her cousin, and taking breaks from watching the kids to unwind. Upset, I told her that was entirely untrue. I had no time for myself. We had planned to spend that entire day together since we missed a romantic day on Valentine's Day because of the children, so having a day together wouldn't hurt. However, she changed our plans and made arrangements with my brother's wife to go to their house that evening. I was frustrated. We had discussed how she felt I didn't want to spend time with her, and yet she created plans on the one day we could be alone. While we were there, she distanced herself and spent the entire time playing games on her phone. Somehow, she managed to guilt me into going to work with her, claiming that she felt unsafe driving alone in the weather. She also stated that she merely wanted my company and that I did not have to do anything. I understood that if I refused to go, she would give me the silent treatment for days and act passive-aggressively about everything. The first house we cleaned was fine. During the second house, she asked for my help. I thought, well, if it gets me home quicker, I might as well wash some windows. We left at 9:30 a.m. and returned at 6:30 p.m. Upon arriving home, I was clearly upset. She asked what was wrong, and I told her. I don't believe it's fair that you guilted me into doing something after I told you I didn't want to. I had really been looking forward to having a day to relax. I feel like I am ignored when I express my concerns, which is very disappointing. She stood up and said, "I am sorry I ruined your day. I guess I will give you some space," and went into the living room. About 2 hours later, I was getting ready for bed and told her I didn't need space and wished she would come to bed with me. She responded that she was sad and didn't want to. I inquired why she felt sad, and she misconstrued my words entirely, saying, "You said that I ruined your day and that spending time with me today was terrible, and that hurt my feelings." At that point, I was enraged. I raised my voice. She had twisted my words to make me feel guilty. I never said that being with her was bad, nor did I claim that my day was ruined. I clarified that cleaning houses and working for free on my first day off in months did not equate to spending time together. I pointed out that when we actually had time together, she chose to make plans with my brother's wife and ignored me throughout. At this juncture, I assumed she grew weary of being confronted about her problematic behavior, so she packed a bag and left for her mother's house in the weather that she claimed to be afraid of driving in alone. If I hadn't asked where she was going, she would have departed without saying anything. She returned 20 minutes later since her mother did not answer her phone. That evening, she went to sleep on the couch without uttering a word. Is this normal behavior? I am starting to feel as though she is emotionally abusive and manipulative. Whenever I mention something that upsets me, she ends up crying, and I am the one who ends up apologizing. In summary, my girlfriend spent the night on the couch after I expressed my dissatisfaction with how she guilted me into working on my day off. Update: we have been texting, and she mentioned that she plans to take her kids and stay somewhere else for a few days to give me the alone time I need. I told her that if this is what she feels is necessary, I would not prevent her, but I believe we should discuss our issues rather than ignore them. She claimed she tried to talk about it last night, but stated that I screamed at her and threw every ounce of help in her face. What transpired last night was her twisting my words and asserting that I did not care enough about her to spend time with her. Yes, I became angry and raised my voice in defense of myself, articulating my genuine feelings toward her and her children. She stated that she would listen to what I had to say, emphasizing that she would only listen and nothing more. Given the circumstances, I feel that unless she is prepared to engage in a mature discussion where we can both express our concerns, rather than having a one-sided dialogue, she should indeed stay elsewhere. I worry she will distort what I say to her family, portraying me as the inconsiderate and emotionally distant individual. Story 3. Boyfriend, M33, used me, F27, for emotional support during his divorce and is now going back to his toxic ex-wife. How can I move on? Edit. Added summary at the end. We had been friends and colleagues for several years before any romantic connection developed. I was aware that his divorce was a long time in the making due to various factors: emotional abuse, personality incompatibility, as well as differing life goals and values, such as the desire to have children. I'll elaborate on that later. I never saw him in a romantic light while he was still married, but I did think he was one of the kindest, funniest, and most genuine individuals I had ever met. Therefore, it did not take long for me to start hoping for something more once I realized he would soon be single. To clarify, I have avoidant tendencies, so this type of situation does not happen often, and I am usually not quick to develop a crush. I noticed his interest almost immediately and later questioned whether I unknowingly influenced his decision to pursue a divorce. We began dating only a few months after his separation, so his divorce was not yet finalized. I kept insisting that I wanted to take things slow since I did not want to become a rebound. But I believed him when he claimed he had been working on separating for so long that he had already processed the emotional aftermath during his previous relationship. It did not take long for me to realize the extent of the emotional baggage he carried. I felt as though he placed me on a pedestal, constantly expressing surprise at my interests and behaviors that his ex did not share, and saying that he wished he had met me a decade earlier. So, naturally, whenever I deviated from this ideal image he had of me, he would become devastated, sulking or turning it into an argument, especially if it reminded him of his ex's behavior in any way. I found myself becoming more reactive as well, walking on eggshells. Only a few months passed before he experienced an emotional breakdown and expressed a desire to end our relationship because he realized he wanted children immediately. We had discussed this prior to becoming a couple, and both agreed we did not want kids while we weren't absolutely certain about the future. It was a clear no for the time being. I recall asking him if he genuinely did not want children, or if he had simply gone along with his ex-wife's viewpoint, which, in hindsight, is a rather ironic thought because it turned out to be true. After our breakup, he attended therapy at my suggestion, and it took only a few months for him to return, claiming he had made the biggest mistake of his life and expressing a willingness to see how our lives could unfold together, regardless of whether we decided to have children. I was cautious, telling him that I did not think he should compromise on this matter and that he needed to be certain about his stance before we could attempt to reconcile. We had numerous discussions before he persuaded me that he had actively worked on this in therapy and recognized that his desire for children stemmed from pressure from family and other factors. I had a gut feeling we would encounter this issue again, but I re-entered the relationship thinking I might regret passing up an opportunity with a potentially extraordinary man, as I had done previously due to my avoidance issues. We shared an incredible summer. Everything felt like a scene from a movie, unlike anything I had ever experienced. However, conflicts and disagreements continued, many of which were rooted in his past relationship and the trauma associated with it. I began to suspect that perhaps his ex wasn't the only difficult person in that relationship. I listened intently to his reflections regarding his marriage after therapy sessions, and I even had to endure conversations between him and his ex a few times. This was not something I would typically accept, but who was I to object if I chose to date someone who was in the midst of a divorce? He always ensured I was comfortable with their discussions and never, to my knowledge, spoke with her without first consulting me. Yet, I began to feel like an unpaid therapist through all of this. After a few months, it all collapsed again for the same reason. He admitted he had, in fact, not changed his mind about children and could no longer deceive himself. We broke up and maintained a peculiar dynamic for a few months as we grappled with the reality that we would not work out. He continued to refer to me as his best friend, expressing a desire not to lose me entirely, which made me realize once more that it revolved around him. Only a month or two later, his ex proposed getting back together because she had also gone to therapy and felt healed. She was definitely not a terrible person anymore, and he eagerly accepted. Oh, and the child issue. That's no longer a problem. Let's have 5. He made it a point to casually inform me about this whole situation, which led me to lash out. I told him he was a selfish individual who had learned nothing in therapy if he intended to return to the source of all his trauma. I expressed that I felt like I had merely been a rebound, someone meant to help him and then be sent back. Since then, I have not wanted to engage in any discussion about their current relationship status. I've only remained cordial with him, yet he keeps making it my concern by asking if I'm okay and trying to downplay whatever their current relationship entails. I haven't felt the need to talk about it and see no reason to. I still have to encounter him somewhat regularly in professional contexts, and I need guidance on how to navigate this situation without losing my sanity. Usually, I recover quickly from breakups, but this one feels particularly challenging. I understand that dating someone whom you may still encounter if the relationship falters is a poor choice, and I recognize that engaging with individuals freshly out of a divorce is also unwise. However, those circumstances have already unfolded, and I am looking for advice on how to manage this when I have to see him, along with some reassurance that he has indeed been quite selfish and that I couldn't have resolved this by simply trying harder. If you found yourself in my situation, how would you proceed? Summary: I dated a longtime friend whom I believed to be my future partner for a year, helping him navigate his divorce from a toxic ex, only to be broken up with twice. He has since returned to his ex, and I must see him often for work. How should I handle this?